What's up, you guys? This is Bart coming to you from TST Industries in sunny Florida, bringing you another episode of TST Garage with our beautiful S1000RR. This is the current generation S1000RR. BMW has really essed the bed with this whole tail lighting system. We decided, hey, you know what? We can remedy that. And here you see our tail lighting system mounted in tandem with this behemoth here. The video we're about to show you will focus on mounting a Fender Eliminator in place of this guy, but in the interest of moving forward, we've already mounted our tail lighting system on it, so you will see that the OEM signal / tail light lamps are disconnected and they're not currently working. We have all of these parts on our website, tstindustries.com, but we do sell things as modules, and therefore we have to showcase the installation videos as modules as well. So we already did a video on the tail lighting system. If you're interested, our YouTube channel has it, and also it could be accessed at tstindustries.com. For the purpose of this video, we will be focusing only on the Fender Eliminator components. Here in front of me, we have the two different variants of Fender Eliminator that we do offer. There is a third little variant that some of you guys may be interested in. It actually doesn't provide any means for remounting your license plate. We call it a closeout system, and it's basically these components that replace they close out the hole left behind by the removal of the fender, and the mounting is basically along the lines of what we'll show you here in this video. You just don't hook up any of the license plate carrying components onto this system. If you're interested in just closing out that hole because you have either a homemade license plate bracket, or you have that swing arm mounted license plate bracket, or you're one of those guys that ride without a license plate, it's up to you. We do sell this component separately if you're interested. Here we have the two different variants. As you can see, I've pre-assembled this. This actually comes to you in a box in this form. You have these components. We will show you how to build that in this video series, and then subsequently how to fit it on the bike. These installations are actually pretty simple. I am pretty enthused about how BMW designed this bike. It breaks down very easily, it builds back up very easily, and our parts fit onto the bike very easily. Let's talk about a couple of nuances of the two different kits we have here, and then we'll get into installation. Here you see our Elite 1 adjustable Fender Eliminator. The closeout is exactly the shape of the fender pad. When you remove the fender, it leaves a hole. This thing fits right in there, makes it really nice and cosmetic, closes everything out. Debris and water have a harder time getting in there, so you're good there. There's one really cool thing about this system. It does enable adjustability of the license plate hanging angle. This is up to you. You loosen these screws, tighten them back up when you've adjusted, and you're good to go. It's customizable. The closeout itself, we actually decided to spend a little bit extra money and time in milling to put in these textured fields that make it look congruent with the actual design language of the whole undertail system. I think a lot of guys out there will appreciate that. Makes it a lot more pleasing to the eye, and also the function is still there. All of these components are CNC machined aluminum, black anodized, will probably outlast your bike. Most people crash their bikes before these components wear out. All of our fasteners are stainless steel, so you'll have years of corrosion-free performance out of these parts. Another little note here, we do have a small hole to pass our license plate light wire through. We decided to put a very, very small hole in there that fits basically just a 2-wire cable. We do not want to open up really big holes in the closeout because it's supposed to protect against water and debris. Whether you choose this light or any other lighting for your license plate on the market, you'll be able to pass 2 little wires through there. Now, we do sell these as a separate unit within the category of product for this bike, and we also have this system as a drop-down option within the product page for all these components. So either way you go, if you do intend to use our system, you actually do have to opt for it. So please make sure if you are shopping for one of these systems, there's a drop-down menu there. Click yes, please add the license plate light to my order. Now this license plate light is plug and play. It does have the OEM connection on one side and this easy connector to connect to this side on the other side. The reason why we did this in the first place is so we don't have to put giant holes through here for the giant connectors that BMW uses. This is just one of those things that we decided to do to make the outer components very cosmetically pleasing and also resist the entry of debris and things like that. So that was our choice. If you like the system, add it. If you want to use something else, that's cool too. All right, let's move over to the low mount. This was the high mount that mounts your license plate right about here, kind of close to the tail. We call it the stock location. This bracket mounts your license plate down here. We call it the low mount. You mount it either under an exhaust bracket. If you've removed your passenger pegs, you mount it in place of the passenger pegs. If you still have passenger pegs, we've included all the necessary hardware to actually make your installation with the passenger pegs. You still get our closeout so that you don't have unsightly holes here and your whole undertail is actually cosmetically pleasing. And then we've included our stainless steel black powder coated bracket that achieves mounting of your license plate down here, enough hardware to get you going. And then we also have our black anodized aluminum license plate holding hardware that comes with this guy to make the connection of your license plate to this bracket really nice and cosmetically pleasing. Here you see two bump-ons that we use on the bottom of the license plate should it actually contact the subtray here. Different size license plates will hang a little different, and we'll have several nuances to consider when mounting this, obviously with all the three options that I talked about: exhaust bracket, passenger pegs, no passenger pegs. This will move the license plate away and towards the subtray here. So in at least one of those variants, you will need these bump-ons to damp vibration. Otherwise you'll be riding around and license plate will be buzzing on you, and that's not cool. So we've provided you with those. In this particular video, we will be focusing on showing you how to install the low mount Fender Eliminator system. Additionally, we'll show you how to make the connection and routing for the license plate light along with this location system. If you require the other installation flow, we do have a separate video. Look for that either on our website, tstindustries.com, within the product page, or check out our YouTube channel. Let's get going. Let's start with removing the seat cowl or seat. Once that's off, we have access to the inside here, and then we will also additionally need to take these two painted outer panels off. For that purpose, I have chosen a T25 Torx for these two fasteners, one on each side. And then once these fasteners clear out, the remainder of the holding fasteners for this panel are press-in fasteners that exist here, two here, and three up here. So we'll have to use a proper sequence to clear them. Get my hands under here, go up the line to here, and this one pops out. Then the front ones, basically on a slight up angle and outward from the center plane of the bike, is the direction you want to be pulling. And then up here, the sequence is front to rear. Do not pull too hard. You want to make sure that we clear the fasteners out, but the panel doesn't jump up. There is one last little tab here that fits into an interference window. So we want to make sure that we clear it out free and we don't snap it off. Again, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we have the two that fit in here, and this guy that comes out of here. Repeat the steps on the opposite side. And now we have access to where the wiring on this bike is. Now, this setup is unique in that we already installed our TST Industries tail light system on this bike. So that is what is plugged in. This extra plug you see here is actually the fender lighting system that used to be plugged in here. If the only lighting that is present on your bike is the fender lighting, then this will still be plugged in. You'll need to unplug it and route it back into this under seat compartment here and free it. Same thing on the other side. Obviously we have our taillight on here, so that remains plugged in. Okay, when I was displaying this on the other side, I didn't show you guys the actual mechanism of removal of this connector from its mating connector, so I'll do that on this side. I've allowed myself to slip this connector set along with its keeper off the sub tray. For that purpose, there is a small window here that has to clear a tab that's in there. You basically lift up gently on that window and disconnect the connector that goes in there. If you've dislodged this, obviously you want to put it back on the sub tray where it went, and that would disconnect your fender lighting if you had the stock fender lighting still on. So we snake that back into this compartment, and then we're left with one connector here. As you can see, I have it free here. Lift up on the window, tab clears out. This is your license plate light. Two conductors within this connector. Just comes down. The remaining portion of the connector that's on the harness side stays hooked up to the sub tray. I'm gonna sneak that back into this compartment, and then obviously I've disconnected my tail lighting system here, so I'm gonna put it back to how it needs to be. If you don't have this set up, disregard this step. All right, I have all my 3 cable sets for the fender lighting off and snaked back into the appropriate compartment. Now I'm going to use that T25 Torx wrench or Torx bit to undo the fender screws. There are only 2. It's pretty cool how BMW designed the system to tab in and only use 2 fasteners. I'll show you guys where they go in just a second. Get the fasteners out and then let the rear end of the fender drop, and basically in this motion tab out these tabs from the receiving geometry. Get the wiring out, and here we go. Under here, this is where the screws go into. So this is where you look for them, take them out, and perform the steps I just showcased. After the removal of the fender, we are left with a giant void here. For that purpose, we have our undertail closeout. Obviously, our license plate bracket will go down here, so we have to do something about closing that out. We don't want rain, debris, and other things going in there. And we also want it to be cosmetically pleasing, congruent with the body language here. For that purpose, we do have our CNC machined black anodized textured setup that fills in here and is very nicely matched to all the lines down here. Now we do have 2 holes here, the center holes. Those are meant for mounting of our adjustable setup. For our purpose here, this is just a closeout, so we will be blocking those out. In the kit, we do have 2 really low profile nuts and 2 really tiny countersunk screws that fit through here. It does have to all be low profile because there's not a lot of room here. And we also have these longer screws that enable mounting through here into the OEM locations for the fasteners for the fender. First, I will block this off. Here you see a medium strength thread locking agent. I have applied that to all the threads on all these fasteners. This way we don't end up losing these fasteners to road vibration. I recommend you guys do the same in your installation. This stuff is not expensive, and it's a good idea to have it in your toolbox. All right, I'm gonna get it hand tight, then I'm gonna grab a 3mm Allen from the outside and an 8mm box or open-ended from the inside. Tighten it down, and that's pretty much it on that. We will reuse the 3mm Allen for the mounting bolts. Here you have a countersunk geometry within the closeout. The countersinks are off axis with the top face so that we could actually achieve the appropriate angle here on this closeout. In the past, I've gotten these seated down and then it ended up looking like this. If yours is looking that way, back off on the screws a little bit, pop it in, and then start tightening the screws again. Sometimes it does get hung up on the undertail lip over here. We want this to look like it's meant to be part of the bike and designed into the bike, not an afterthought. And if it's assembled correctly, it does really look that way. All right, since we do have thread locking agent on here, we don't want to over tighten this. These connections, they do go into riv nuts, so those riv nuts are likely to be aluminum. You don't want to stress those threaded features. Once we're done here with the closeout, we could focus in on just mounting the license plate bracket. Now, these bikes vary by setup, at least the ones that have come in through here. So I have seen some come through with no rear pegs, no passenger pegs. I've seen some come through with passenger pegs, and here you see no passenger pegs, but we also have this Acra exhaust on its own Acra hanger. So we've provided you guys with ample hardware so that you have choices for each one of these scenarios. We have 4 washers for the use with passenger pegs. Now, when you put this in between the passenger peg and the subframe, it produces a gap in the front. So one of those washers will go in the front location between the passenger peg and the subframe. This produces the same gap, it's the same thickness, so now you're evenly spaced, and then you use the other washer. There are 4 provided, so 2 per side, under the head of this fastener, put it through and in, or if you're actually mounting through the passenger pegs, you'll reuse the passenger peg fastener because it's longer. If there's no passenger pegs, you basically just use 2 of these washers and 2 of the fasteners and screw this in to the rear mounting position for the passenger pegs. If you have this kind of a setup where you have a thick carbon fiber or other material bracket here that holds your exhaust, then stack up enough washers to make up that same thickness. And for us here with the Acra, it's 2. And then on the other side here, we already have a fastener with a washer underneath it. So we'll just put the stack of 2 under here to make up that same thickness here. We're gonna extract this particular fastener that is in there. I believe this is the same fastener that comes out from the passenger pegs, and we'll basically just fasten that just like this. So 2 washers, then our license plate bracket, then another washer under the head of our fastener, and this fastener is large enough that we could just forgo our spare washer and just put it right in. So that's what we'll do on this particular setup. I just wanted to arm you guys with all the info you need for all the different setups that I've noticed. Now here we have a T40, I believe. Yep, T40 Torx. Gonna remove this fastener. Now this is out, and we could grab our pre-configured setup for this actual configuration here. Again, I am stacking 2 washers underneath this bracket for this connection to make up this thickness so that we don't have this misaligned. I'm gonna get this fastener in first. These are M8 threads, pretty coarse, 1.25 millimeter thread. It does end up having a lot of friction and a lot of surface contact on the threaded features. So typically I don't do thread locking agents on these threads. I just torque them down pretty hard. If you feel more comfortable with some thread locking agent on there, please go ahead and do that. Get this fastener back through here. Get that thread started by hand. Get it tightened down. The heads of our fasteners take a 6 millimeter Allen. We decided not to do the whole Torx thing. Tighten it down nicely. Now this is ready to go. And for this particular setup, when we put our license plate on here, we are spaced far enough away from the subframe that the bottom of the license plate is not going to make contact here. Now I've seen the other setups where we don't have this extra spacing, and let's say we're just going straight to the subframe or in between the pegs and the subframe, then we have a chance of making contact here on the bottom of the license plate to the subtray, and that will precipitate a buzzing noise for you, and we don't want that. So we do ship these setups with a couple bump-ons. These are rubber bump-ons. They're self-adhesive. They have a nice adhesive on the back. If you do find that you have contact here, just go ahead and find out on the back of your license plate where that is. Apply one of these to each side, and then that will be the part that makes contact, and this is rubber, so it'll prevent buzzing. Just a little thought that we had during the R&D phase. All right, this is pretty much good to go. One thing I do want to talk about before we go any further is if you're using our license plate light, which is the easiest thing to do. I know some guys are really keen on the license plate light bolts or some other technology. That's cool, you know, we don't want to limit you guys, but for those technologies, you'll have to figure out the best routing. For us, we basically design all of our components to work with our components. So we do have this divot here at the appropriate height to accept our license plate light wiring to the back of this, to the underside of this bracket, and then we can route it up through under the driver's seat and appropriately. I'll show you how to do that, but I think this is the easiest way to achieve having a license plate light on your bike with our components. There is a crack, a split between this panel and this panel right here, and this is typically where I shove the wiring. So I will not be putting on our license plate just yet. The license plate actually clamps this component against the license plate bracket. Before I go ahead and do that, I will route this to the inside and get it connected, and then we will make use of this little split to just shove this in there. I have seen some guys that we've sent this system to before it hits the market, and they chose to put a little hole through this plastic before they put this bracket on. That was more cosmetically pleasing to them. I'm basically right now just going after the least invasive method for you guys to get this routed and get it cosmetically pleasing. So if you like this method, cool. If you want to put a tiny little hole through here and you're okay with that, that's also cool. Whatever you want to do, we'll jump up top. I'll show you how to route this to the appropriate place. I'll show you how to connect it via our plug and play setup, get it cinched down to the subframe, and then we'll put the rest of the stuff on, get it figured out, finalized, and then we'll move forward. For the continuation of a process here, it'll be necessary to take off the driver's seat. There is a T25 Torx screw back here, one single screw that holds that seat on. We will need to take that off. That screw stays captive in the seat. The seat just pulls up and out. Now we have access here. We have our wire from our license plate light that will go into this compartment through here to the left rear of the battery. There is a void in here. We can go ahead and get it snaked up under this bracket. We will need to route some stuff underneath. Like I said, if you are drilling a hole in that area, just that's cool. Just be careful not to drill into your battery. That is just not a good day for anyone. Forward this all the way to the back compartment here, and we will go through a routing procedure on the side here. We'll show you from a different perspective. If you guys are following my least invasive way of routing this, then we will be routing through this crack. And then also in this area, there's a tab against from this piece of substrate to this piece of substrate that our wire will route under. First, I will pry up on that tab and get my wire under there. And then I will make sure that I have ample slack here so that we could actually jam this wire, this cable, into the crack. Here it looks like I have a good amount of slack. You could identify a good amount of slack by having excess here that'll loop down a little bit, and that is fine. You have your license plate that will cover this entire area. So I'm just going to position my cable. It's sort of rectangular with rounded edges. We want to go with the thinner side into that crack. I do not recommend using metal tools such as a screwdriver to push this in. You may damage the wires that are contained within the cable. I do like to do this by hand. I know it's a little difficult to fit your hand in there, but produces good effects here. All right, I think that's pretty good. And we've already routed this under all of these plastics to the back side here. It's coming out of the trunk. If you guys recall, in the disassembly steps, we did remove the license plate light connector from here. So this is where we're going to connect. Now we can actually route this wire under the top tail section through here where the original license plate wire terminated. I tried to take care not to tangle my wiring together, make sure it's separate. If I ever need to take it off, it makes it easier. Now on another note, I want to make sure that this is pretty taut but not inducing tension. Everything looks good here. Now we have this type of connection that does not fit in there. So we've provided you guys with a plug and play connection that fits only one way into this OEM connector and then terminates in a quick connector on this side. Yellow will be your plus side that will connect to the red, and then black goes to black. Pretty simple. Our license plate lights ship with about this much exposed conductor. We can try to fit it in there and just clamp it down and see if we make the connection, or we could strip off a little bit more. And this is the way I usually do it. I'll strip off an additional 6 millimeters or so, 1/4 inch or so, twist it like this, and then put a loop in it like so. And that gives me a little bit of bulk that connects into this quick connector a little bit better. Now, I know that some of you guys are thinking you guys could have pre-wired this connector into your license plate light and made it simpler on us. This is a license plate light that's universal to the back and low mount. So we wanted to make sure that we could still fit it through the tiny little hole for the wire and still make a plug and play connection. So this was actually a deliberate decision, and we just have to stand behind that at this point. We'll bottom this out in this connector, snap these guys down, and test the system. Now, license plate light is not supposed to come on immediately. It takes a couple seconds. Give it some time. Jiggle these connections. Make sure that you have good solid connection. If it blinks, you want to make sure that you have a stable connection. Disconnect this side and redo it one more time. Make sure it stays on solid. We do have solid light. We're good to go. We're already taught through the inside. We're already jammed in here, good to go. So now it's time for bulk distribution. I like to S-fold these things like so. Get a nice tight little package here, try to neaten it up, and then we have provided you guys with a cable tie that can go around this area here. It loops itself back around. I like to get it partially engaged first and then jam things in. That makes it a lot simpler for creatures having only two hands. Now we want to make sure that this is fixed in place and doesn't move around. We want to make sure that it's contained within that volume created by this panel against the subframe, and that looks good right there. So I'm going to tighten this down, cut off the excess, and then I think we're good here. We can proceed to the mounting of our license plate on here. This kit does come with our anodized aluminum hardware for mounting the license plate. You basically split it into these components. You have a countersunk washer that goes on the outside along with the screw. And then you have a stainless steel washer that goes on the opposite side of the bracket to which the license plate mounts to. And then the nut caps off that connection. Then we engage the thread by hand. Well, this is still loose. We'll make sure we have the right configuration here. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a tiny little divot here in the top of the bracket that accepts the wire from the license plate light. That's where it should be centered on. And then the license plate itself goes over the license plate light. Here you may notice that we have a strip of adhesive that has been pre-applied to the license plate light. We've designed that in for the guys that worry about license plate lights falling off. Typically, we don't have a problem with this on any of the installs that I've done with just clamping the component in between the license plate and its bracket. That's usually how I make these installations. If you guys are inclined to use the adhesive, please go ahead. No big deal. Either way, you'll have a good connection here. Now to tighten this connection down, I'll be using a 3mm Allen from the outside, 8mm box wrench or open-ended wrench rather from the inside. Snug it down just a little bit, leave some adjustability. We will want to make sure that this license plate is center and level. We'll do that now. Make sure our license plate light is actually centered. And then I like to have my license plate itself up a little bit and then move my screws inboard a little bit. This looks great to me. So I'm happy with that. I'm gonna lock that down for this part. To make sure that my license plate doesn't shift, I will turn the nut from the inside mostly. These nuts do have a nylock locking element, so we don't have to worry about putting any Loctite or anything like that on there. Boom. That's pretty much it. Everything's good to go here, looking good. Let's go ahead and replace these side components here in the reverse order of disassembly. The tab goes in first, and then in sequence we go 1, 2, 3, then these two here, and the last one, and we can replace the screw that holds that to the tail. Make sure that the actual shoulder of the screw is concentric with the hole on that painted piece. You can, by mistake, clamp it down and damage the painted fairing, so make sure that fits through that hole first before you start turning it in. Repeat the steps on the other side. Now we can go ahead and replace the driver's seat. It just tabs in under the tank, and then we just have to bring that rear screw into alignment. All right. Then we replace the seat or seat cowl, whatever the bike is equipped with. And that's pretty much it. I just wanted to talk about these bump-ons a little bit. I mentioned in the intro and along the way a couple times that we do ship these bump-ons with the system, just in case your configuration produces a contact between the license plate and any of the components beneath it. That will produce a buzz. We don't want that. So if you do have contact somewhere, please use that in between, and the rubber that this is made of will decrease the amount of buzzing, probably remove it altogether. For our setup here, we're actually spaced properly, so we don't have any contact. We're good to go. So I would call this installation complete. And as you can see, this is probably the sleekest this bike can look. Our TST Industries components, the lighting components, and the Fender Eliminator components really produce a very aggressive and restyled look on this bike. It's congruent to its design language. I think it looks great. Now, if you do agree with me, check out tstindustries.com. You'll find these parts on our website, along with other parts for this bike and probably some other bikes that you may have in your stable. Thank you for watching. Mash that subscribe button if you like what we do, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Ride safe.